The first thing I noticed was the sound. 19 engines, low and steady, growling through the empty street. I was standing there in my socks, toes numb, soaked in dirty slush where my boots used to be, squinting into a wall of headlights from black BMWs that had just boxed me in. One by one, doors opened. Men and women stepped out, all in dark coats, their breath fogging in the December air like smoke. I had nothing on me but a trash bag of clothes and the stupid hope that giving my boots to that stranger had meant something. Now I just felt exposed and stupid. Were they here for him? For me? If you're new here, subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from because this is about to get unreal. And the craziest part is, a few hours earlier, I honestly thought my night couldn't possibly get any worse. But standing there barefoot, surrounded by luxury cars, I realized I was wrong. How did I go from being thrown out on Christmas Eve to this? A few hours before those BMWs showed up, I was Emily Carter, 27, ringing up everybody else's Christmas at the register. I live in a tiny one-bedroom in a small city you've flown over, the kind of place with malls, churches, and rents that don't match the paychecks. I worked 40, sometimes 50 hours a week at a discount clothing store, smiling at people buying outfits I could never afford, praying my card wouldn't decline when I bought instant noodles on the way home. This year, my Christmas wish list was embarrassingly simple. Finish my shift, grab some cheap takeout, binge a movie alone, and not think about how long it's been since anyone called me family. My parents and I haven't spoken in years, and holidays just pressed their thumbs on that bruise. All week, little things went wrong. A customer screamed at me over a missing coupon, my manager forgot my overtime, my bus broke down in the freezing rain, and every day there was that pink late notice taped to my door, getting more aggressive. On Christmas Eve morning, my landlord finally caught me in the hallway, arms crossed, voice flat. "Rent. Tonight, Emily. No more extensions. If it's not in my account by midnight, you're out." He meant it. By the time my shift ended on Christmas Eve, my bank app still looked like a bad joke. $43 and some change. Not even close to rent. I walked home slow, hoping for a miracle, trying not to think about my landlord's deadline ringing in my head like a countdown. The hallway smelled like someone's sugar cookies and pine cleaner. Behind my neighbor's doors, I heard laughter, clinking dishes, a Christmas movie spilling canned joy into the stairwell. My door, though, had something else. A folded notice taped across the lock, and my landlord standing there with his keys and a look that made my stomach drop. "Emily, I'm done," he said, shaking his head. "I told you midnight. It's not here. I can't keep carrying you." I begged. I really did. I explained about extra shifts, about my manager messing up my paycheck, about how I just needed one more week. His face softened for a half second, then hardened again. "I'm sorry. I have a mortgage too." He unlocked my door, and within minutes, my life was reduced to trash bags and boxes on the curb. A string of colored lights blinked cheerfully in the window above me, while I stood there in my thin coat, watching my breath fog in the air. Cars passed, their drivers wrapped in music and warmth, not even glancing my way. No family to call, no friend with a spare couch, just me, my gags, and the short realization that I was officially out of places to go that night alone, wandering the freezing streets. For a minute, I just stood there on the curb, staring at my bags, like maybe I'd wake up and this would be some bad Christmas dream. It wasn't. The landlord's door shut behind me, and the hallway warmth vanished. I grabbed the heaviest bag, hooked the others in my raw fingers, and stepped out into the street. The cold swallowed me the second the building light clicked off. The air cut through my coat like it was paper. Wind slapped my cheeks, turning my skin numb, while my plastic handles dug into my hands. I had boots, but the ice still bit through the soles with every step. As I walked, apartment windows glowed yellow. I saw Christmas trees, people clinking glasses, kids racing around in living rooms in new pajamas. From the sidewalk, it all looked like a world I'd somehow been erased from. Somewhere down the block, Mariah Carey was playing, muffled through a cracked window, mixing with the crunch of salt and ice under my feet. I pulled out my phone. No missed calls, no new texts, nothing. My banking app blinked that same humiliating number, And when I checked nearby shelters, most said full, the rest were miles away. An Uber might as well have been a private jet with what I had in my account. There was a time when I could have called my mom, when one shaky phone call might have meant a ride, a couch, a blanket that smelled like home. But certain words were said years ago, loud enough to slam that door shut for good. Eventually, my shoulders burned, my hands went stiff, and my legs felt hollow. When I saw a bus stop bench under a flickering streetlight, I dropped my bags and sank down, staring at the empty road, feeling so terribly numb outside and in. For a while, I sat there on that bench, watching my breath drift into the dark, trying not to cry because tears would only freeze on my face. Then I saw him. Across the intersection, under a crooked streetlight, an older man stood hunched over, clutching a cardboard sign. His jacket was thin, the kind of army green that had faded to gray, and his shoes were torn open. I could see his socks touching the snow. People flowed around him like water around a rock, coats pulled tight, heads down, bags filled with last-minute presents. Nobody met his eyes. I told myself not to look. I had my own disaster. I didn't know where I was sleeping that night. Logic said keep moving, conserve what I had, protect myself. But the longer I watched him shake, the colder my own boots felt, like they were burning a hole through my conscience. I argued with myself in circles. He'll be fine. Someone else will help. You can't save everybody. But deep down, I knew what that meant. If I walked away, I'd be choosing to be like everybody else who had already passed him. Before I could talk myself out of it, I grabbed my bags and crossed the street. "Hey," I said, my voice coming out smaller than I expected. "You okay?" He looked up, eyes startlingly clear. "I've been better," he answered, smiling like we were sharing a joke. We talked for a minute, where he slept, how long he'd been out there, how the police moved him along when he lingered. Then, without giving myself time to hesitate, I bent down, unlaced my boots, and slid them off, the snow stabbing through my socks. "Here," I said, pressing the boots into his hands. He stared at me like I'd done something impossible. "You have no idea what you've done." The snow soaked straight through my socks the second I stepped away from him. The boots looked huge on his feet as he tugged them on, mouth still forming that strange, almost smile. I didn't wait around to hear anything else. My toes were already going numb. I just wanted to find somewhere, anywhere, out of the wind. I'd barely reached the end of the block when I heard it. At first, it was a low rumble, like distant thunder. Then it grew louder, multiplied, engines overlapping until the sound swallowed the quiet street. I turned, heart pounding, and watched as sleek black shakes slid out from side streets and driveways, headlights cutting through the dark. One BMW, then another, then another. They moved almost in slow motion, gliding into position around me, until I realized I was standing dead center in a widening circle of 19 identical black BMWs. Doors clicked open in near-perfect unison. Men and women in dark coats stepped out, shoes crunching on ice, faces unreadable in the glare. Adrenaline surged. This had to be some kind of gang thing or a drug deal or something I wanted no part of. Had that man dragged me into some twisted setup? I pictured my name in a headline. Broke retail worker disappears after helping the wrong stranger. I clutched my bags to my chest, fought the urge to run, knowing there was nowhere to go. Then one person stepped forward from the nearest car. A tall woman, mid-40s maybe, sharp eyes scanning me like she'd memorized my picture. "Emily Carter?" she asked, saying my full name like a confirmation. My stomach dropped. "How do you know my name?" She glanced back at the others, then at my bare, shaking feet. "We've been looking for someone exactly like you." I had no idea what that meant or how my life was changing. Cold air bit at my ankles as the woman studied me, like she was confirming I existed. Before I could answer, a door behind her opened, and the homeless man in my boots stepped out of one of the BMWs. He wasn't hunched now. He walked differently, shoulders back, eyes sharp. Under the streetlight, I could see the jacket I'd thought was ragged was actually dirty on purpose. My stomach twisted. "What is this?" I whispered. He smiled, the same one I'd seen on the corner, but now it carried weight. "My name is Daniel Reyes," he said. "I used to sleep under that bridge 3 streets over. Now I own half the buildings you just walked past." He gestured at the cars. "This is my team, lawyers, social workers. We've been out here all day, seeing who would actually stop." Hundreds looked away. You were the only one who gave up something you truly needed. The woman stepped forward. "We run a foundation. Emergency housing, education, job placement. We don't advertise, we just watch." I thought of my mom's last words to me, how she'd called me selfish when I left home after she chose her boyfriend's temper over my safety. I'd spent years believing her. Daniel nodded at my bare feet. "You don't leave someone like that on the sidewalk," he said. "If you'll let us, Emily, tonight is not the end of your story. It's the beginning." The first thing they did was put me in a car and crank the heat until my toes tingled again. 20 minutes later, I was standing in a hotel room that smelled like detergent and lemon, staring at a real bed like it was a spaceship. They'd left a bag on the chair, sweatpants, a hoodie, thick socks, underwear still wrapped in plastic. When I stepped into the shower and hot water hit my shoulders, I braced my hands on the tile and just sobbed. Not the pretty kind of crying, ugly, shaking, years of "you don't matter" rinsing off my skin with the dirt. The next day, they drove me to their office, a bright space above a laundromat. Posters on the walls showed faces and stories. Was on the street, now a nurse. Slept in her car, now owns a bakery. They told me they wanted my story too, not as a pity project, but as proof that one act of kindness could ripple outward. 2 days after being dumped on the curb like trash, I was sitting at a desk signing papers for emergency housing and a retail management training program. For the first time in years, I didn't feel disposable. I felt chosen, seen, and unbelievably, cautiously, hopeful. It felt like waking up. Now, when I think about that night, I still see those headlights, that circle of black BMWs around a girl in soaked socks who thought her life was over. I replay this one question. What if I'd kept walking? Because I wanted to. I was tired, angry, embarrassed. It would have been so easy to tell myself it's not my problem, the way everyone else did. If I had, I'd probably still be bouncing between couches or lining up at a shelter, instead of talking to you from a safe place with my name on a door. I'm not saying every stranger is part of some secret test, or that you'll get a miracle every time you help someone. But I am saying this: you never know who you're helping, and you never know who's watching you prove who you are. That one small choice, to give away the only decent thing I had left, ended up being the turning point in my story. And the next turning point in yours is hiding in a moment that looks as inconvenient and uncomfortable. So here's what I want you to do. Before this week ends, look for one person you can help in a tangible way. Then come back and tell me in the comments what happened, because I want to read your stories. And if you haven't yet, subscribe, because that night, surrounded by 19 black BMWs, wasn't the end. It was the beginning for me, honestly.